I was thinking recently about how to describe what it is that Modzy does, and sort of like what scenarios in which it's actually going to add a lot of value. Can you give me an example of a case where Modzy is something that you could use if you're trying to scale AI in your company?
Sure. So Modzy is designed to allow you to take models that are written in Docker containers using any language, framework, combination of libraries, whatever, and you can add those to Modzy, and Modzy will handle the problem of running that container, so you've already built, run it at scale, so you can run it 100 times, you can run a whole bunch of data through it, and do it in a way that is friendly for the enterprise.
Okay, so there's a whole lot to unpack there. I want to go back a couple steps. So you said something about Docker containers. As you know, my coding skills have gone a little rusty, but let's say for the sake of argument, I've got a model. I don't know, maybe I'll do something in Python and TensorFlow that does something simple like just object detection. So I've got an object detection model written in Python. TensorFlow is kind of my underlying framework. What do I have to do to get this thing into a format that I could use it in Modzy? What does that look like?
Yeah, so you start by just packaging it up in a Docker container the way that you would normally. Write a Docker file, import Python, install your dependencies, and then run your script. Okay. And then to work on our product, to have it work on Modzy, you just add a simple web server that responds to a couple of routes, and that's it.
All right. And if I've got a model, I don't know, in some other languages, I've been playing around with Scala in my free time, and I've seen some interesting stuff develop there. If I've got something in Scala and I want to use like PyTorch, do I have to do different stuff to make my model work using some of these other technologies?
Well, first of all, PyTorch is only in Python, and getting that to work in Scala would be quite a feat.
That makes a good point.
But if you wanted to use Scala, absolutely no problem. Scala runs in the JVM, so you just import you just start from a Docker container that has the JVM in it. You compile your Scala program, no problem.
Okay. And if I've got multiple inputs I want to handle, maybe a combination of like some structured text data plus imagery or something like that, do I have to do anything fancy to make that possible, or is it kind of like I only can accept one input?
Well, traditionally models only accept one kind of input, so you might have different models that process those different inputs. But as far as Modzy is concerned, the input data is opaque. We can accept any kind of data. Your model defines what data it supports. And we just copy the bits and pass them right along to you.
All right. I mean, that sounds nice. So, for my colleagues who work in software development, one of the big challenges is figuring out how you take this machine learning model, been developed, been trained, and then put it into a space where someone else can actually use it and consume it, and get access to this capability. So once we put a model into Modzy, how does someone else get access to that model? How do you run this model against other data sets? Can you kind of talk me through that?
Sure. So one of the big problems we have today is there are lots of really great models out there, but to use any one of them, you have to write some sort of an integration. You have to build a data processing pipeline. You have to add an integration into the product or dashboard or a data management tool that you're using. One of the problems that Modzy solves is that Modzy is a one-stop shop for your models. It's easy to package them up. You can add them to Modzy, and then there's a single API interface that once you've integrated it once, you can reuse any model. So all that work that you did to get that first model up and running, you don't have to do it for the second, the third, the 100th, the 1000th. It's already done. And
that's awesome. When I'm trying to use these models, I don't know. Do I need is it a lot of training to figure out how to consume these things? How much time would you say it would take me to figure out how to send my data against from these models?
Yeah. So we make it as easy as possible. If you know how to write an API, write against a REST API, you can use our product. When you want to submit a job to run some data against a particular model, you just tell us what model, what version of that model, and where the data is, and we'll handle the rest.
Sure. I've got a little bit of Python skill, and I've done a little bit in Java, but I don't usually write a lot of stuff sort of to specific API endpoints. I try and use the commands available in those languages. Like, is there an easier way for me to do it if I'm writing in a specific language?
Sure. Out of the box, we've got a whole bunch of integrations, SDKs for the most common languages. So in some cases, it's down to a single function call.
That would be very helpful. I'd be okay with that. Okay, so we've got a way to get the model in. We've got a way for people to access it. I think the big question, and we're looking at this architecture diagram here, which is pretty sophisticated from what I can tell. A lot of this seems to be focused on being able to then scale either a lot of models or a lot of data against these models, which, I mean, that's kind of the goal of enterprise AI, taking these models out of the lab and putting them into the enterprise. You're doing that so that you can get, ideally, huge horizontal scalability out of these machine learning models and run them for a bunch of different use cases, maybe multiple business units, what have you. So what does it look like to be able to increase, the number of, or the amount of infrastructure these models are running on? If I have a really big job I need to accomplish, how does Modzy help me with doing that?
Sure. So Modzy's designed to be able to run on a whole bunch of different kinds of environments. You can run in cloud environments, in which case you have sort of that near infinite scalability, horizontal scalability that the cloud provides. We also have it's also made to run on premise. So if you've got a data center with 10 servers, 100 servers, 1,000 servers, if you have multiple data centers spread worldwide, Modzy can run on that. And we can take advantage of as much or as little of that infrastructure capacity as you want to use.
That's great. Are there any requirements, I guess, for the infrastructure I need to have? Do I need a specific amount of infrastructure, or is there a specific, setup or configuration I need to have for Modzy to be able to actually work in the hardware I've got available to me?
Yeah, so Modzy was designed to take advantage of the power of Kubernetes and all the things that Kubernetes gives us in terms of being able to orchestrate containers and handle the life cycle of those containers and those models. And so as long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, you can run Modzy. Okay. The number of models that you can run simultaneously, the kinds of models that you can run if they have special hardware requirements like specific GPUs or other yet to be invented hardware processing modules.
Quantum hardware.
Yeah, or
for
the new
yeah.
tensor units that Google has in their data centers. As long as you have hardware that's capable of running the model attached to your cluster somewhere, Modzy will handle making sure that it gets run on a machine that meets those requirements.
So if I've got a lot, I can scale it more than if I only have a little bit of hardware available to me, and kind of just flex this to fit that envelope.
Yeah, and even when you hit full saturation of your infrastructure, Modzy's smart enough to be able to take processing requests that are higher priority and make sure that those get executed before the lower priority jobs, even to the point of pausing lower priority jobs in order to run the higher priority ones.
Got it. So is it kind of like a printer queue where the jobs back up if something's wrong, but as soon as issues fixed, like everything gets processed, like jobs don't get lost or anything like that?
Jobs don't get lost, and Modzy is self-healing, so it will continue to try to run a job until it either reaches completion or it's no longer possible to run that job.
Okay. Are there any other ways for me to interact with these models besides direct coding? Do I have to write queries against these models myself, or are there other ways for me to get some of these AI capabilities into other applications I have in my enterprise, let's say?
Yeah, so we've been working on a number of pre-built integrations with common tools. So if you have a Microsoft Word document and you want to do named entity recognition on the contents of that document, we have a plugin for Microsoft Word that allows you to just push a button, say, give me named entity recognition, and outspit the results.
That's awesome. A lot of work gets done in Microsoft Office, so that would actually be pretty helpful in a lot of cases. I spend a lot of my time in Excel, so having tools in Excel to help me with some of those machine learning capabilities would be pretty interesting. I guess the last area I wanted to touch on briefly is if this is something that I think is going to be useful for the business operations I have, trying to optimize my deployments of machine learning capabilities, I got to get everything accredited and approved by probably my CISO, security reviews, certainly, maybe other chief decision makers have to be involved. What's Modzy doing, or how is Modzy making it easy for me to be able to get through some of those accreditations, in particular from like a security perspective?
Yeah, so Modzy follows all the common best practices for sort of modern distributed architectures. Every service has mutual TLS authentication against all the other services, and what traffic is allowed to flow where is very tightly controlled. We tie into single sign-on systems, so if you've already got
we use LDAP, so like if
LDAP,
is that something we can
SAML,
connect into?
all of the standard directory integrations, you can support those, so that you don't have to have a separate username and password to log into Modzy.
Yep, that's great. I mean, is there anything else we should know if I'm ready to sort of get up and running, try and scale this, I want to deploy my models? Anything else about this platform that you think would be interesting to highlight, or capabilities you think that would be really useful for someone who's, again, trying to go from models in a lab to models in enterprise production?
Yeah, so Modzy was designed to run in as many places as possible. So we can run on private cloud, we can run on public cloud, AWS, Azure, Google, anywhere you can run a Kubernetes cluster, which also includes on-prem. So if you've got your own data center with your own bare metal hardware, maybe they're in VMs, maybe not. We can install it and run there too. Internet connected or not.
All right. Well, it's great. Nathan, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate
Thank you.
it.